Okay, so we're going to get started if people can take a seat. I know the parking was challenged. The softball game is in extra innings, unexpectedly. So we tried to back it up so that they would be cleared, and the athletic director said they're in extra innings. So. Oh, they just won. Okay. And the baseball team, I believe, won. Is that correct?
I think so.
Yes, baseball won. And how about tennis? They were doing well when we popped over to see how they were doing. So I know people are still checking in. Just give it another minute. Okay, so welcome and thank you so much for coming out tonight. I know with the wonderful weather and taking time out of your busy schedules and everything that we really appreciate it. So important to have you here and hear your voices and have you see the school board's adopted budget to learn about it, and then our moderator would take us through the process of voting the expenditure articles and then the revenue articles. So thank you all for being here. We're going to start the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance, and the flag is behind you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So we're going to go over the purpose in a moment, but the first thing I want to do is have the school board members introduce themselves. So I'm going to start over here, Scott, and we'll have the mic go down.
Scott Fife, Wales. Robert English, Wales.
Nicole Russell, Sabatis.
Robert Gayton, Sabatis.
Diane Whalen, Sabatis.
Laura Clifford, Sabatis.
Doug Bumpus, Litchfield.
Christy Willett, Litchfield.
Jill Bouchard, Litchfield.
Thank you. All right, so next order of business. I'm going to go over to the podium. So the first order is to elect by ballot a moderator to proceed at said meetings. Do I have a nomination? Okay, we have a nomination, Randall Greenwood. Second, I heard a second. And second. Okay. Any other nominations? Any other nominations? Seeing none, can we take a vote for the nominations to end at this point? We're going to move forward. Okay, I'm getting. All right, just raise your paddle if you're all set with Randy's nomination. Okay.
No.
So now what we're going to do is vote for him to be the moderator. That was to close nominations. I'm on it. It's close nominations. So I need at least 3 of you or more to go back and vote for the moderator. Where Sharon is. I see 4 people up, so that's great. 3 people. Okay. We'll close the voting, and Sharon, you will do us the honor of counting. Five. Okay, Randall Greenwood, come on up to be sworn in. Oh, yeah, were they offering? Good question. Okay, are you ready? I, Randall Greenwood, do swear that I will faithfully discharge, to the best of my ability, the duties incumbent on me as moderator of this annual budget meeting, according to the Constitution and laws of the state, and that I will support the Constitution of the United States and that of this state, so long as I shall continue a citizen thereof. So help me God. Thank you.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Is this on?
It's on.
All right. Couple of housekeeping items. Can I get the ballot clerks from the 3 towns to come up and be sworn in? All right. Would you each raise your right hand and repeat after me? I state your name. Do swear that I will faithfully discharge, to the best of my ability, the duties incumbent on me as clerk of the annual budget meeting, according to the Constitution and laws of the state, and that I will support the Constitution of the United States and of this state, so long as I shall continue a citizen thereof. So help me God. All right. Print your name, sign. Print your name, sign. Well said. Thank you. All right. Next, I'd like to indicate how we're going to proceed tonight. We're going to be using the Maine Moderator's Manual, A Guide to Town Meeting, 7th edition, 2021, as our guiding document. Hearing no objections, it's so ordered. We're going to have a presentation of the budget from the superintendent. But before we do that, I have a motion. I believe I'm going to recognize the chair of the school board, Jill.
I motion to allow non-voting administrators and the RSU's legal counsel to speak at the meeting, which includes Catherine Grondin, Kathy Martin, Samantha Garnett Sias, Jonathan Varney, Norma Jean Audette, James Palmer, Nancy Dwyer, Marco Aliberti, Amy St. Pierre, Aga Dixon, and Brian Daniels.
It's been moved and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion carries. I might have to hold the mic. Is that better? All right. All right, I'm going to give a quick general overview of the meeting, and then I'm going to introduce the superintendent. When somebody wants to be recognized, I would like you to go to the microphone, state your name, and if you're making a motion or what your remarks are, but please state your name so we can identify you. All questions will go through the moderator. That means you ask me the question. If it needs an answer, I will deflect the question to the appropriate person. But all conversation comes through the moderator. We will be using our placards to vote unless there is a request for a secret ballot, which would then be voted on to have a secret ballot. However, the additional local article will be a written ballot per state statute, so that one will be a written ballot. If somebody wants to end discussion, you could move the previous question. However, that is a high-ranking order, so it would take 2/3 of those present in order to end discussion on any article. And that being said, before we get into the articles, I'll introduce the superintendent for the presentation.
All right, thank you so much. So I'm going to do, thank you. I'm going to do an overview, and you also noticed that we had a handout for you of the cost centers, so that you just had kind of something in your hand that there'll also be slides, but you'll have some information around the cost centers. What I'm going to do is do overview of what's driving the budget, what's making this increase, and so I want to make sure you're informed around that as we get into the articles. So the first thing is we are in a, yes, sorry?
Could you go to the microphone, sir, so we can all hear?
Is the DEI considered a requirement by the state or the federal government? Diversity, equity, inclusion, is that a requirement for us to teach that in our schools?
I mean, you recognize the individual, it's your presentation, so if you want to answer the
know if you were
question.
going to recognize for the question. Okay, so one, I'm going to go through the budget drivers. You'll see on that handout where I note COVID positions, and that will be part of the slides as we go through, yes. The DEI is not part of it. There are different learning results that we talk about, anything with discrimination, bullying, those type of things. So, but no, there isn't a law that says you must teach DEI. It's more about the learning results, what's in the main learning results.
Can you explain or tell us what funds or positions, as you go through this, are positions that cover parts of DEI, please?
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so I think what's really important is for you to know that RSU4 is one of the largest employers probably in this area. We employ over 225 employees, and for that, we have increases for salaries. So one of the big drivers is the salary increases for our staff. And so I put that there, that represents about $644,000 is the salaries for our employees. And that ranges from our custodians to our nurses to our teachers, administrators, so all the positions, each of those positions had increases, and that's what that represents. Then, with that, there are health benefit increases. So we are told how much of our increase will be with our health insurance, and this year, we're budgeted at 12%. So for those 225 employees, those who elect to take health benefits with us, that increase is $561,000. So you can see between our benefits and our salary increases, we're at $1 million, okay? And that's to support the programming for our students, to cover all the aspects of running the school department. Then we had some drivers in our special education, which is required by law, and you'll see that in cost center number 2, which is special education. And we budget for 19 placements for our special ed students who need specialized programming to attend schools that best meet their educational needs. And all those decisions are made through what we call an individual educational process. So the parents are there, the school department's there, we all talk about what's best for the student. And of course, we look at the least restricted first. What can we offer in RSU4 to meet that student's need? And if we can't, and we have a decision coming out of IEP to look at it out of district placement, that's what we budget for. So we budget for 19 placements, and we are told by the Department of Education to expect a 6% increase to those tuition costs. So with that, we had the 6% tuition increase, plus when they are at those placements, they receive occupational therapy, physical therapy, and speech, and the school district has an obligation to pay a portion of that in order to have a reimbursement. So that is $335,000. The other driver is our maintenance, and as you know, if you were here last year, and I recognize many of your faces that you were here last year, with the reduction of our maintenance cost center last year, we are looking at really the increases are around those inflation things that inspections, security, water testing, our building insurance, pest control, so things that we contract to make sure our facilities are up to code, that we're meeting what we need to meet to keep our facilities safe. That is a $202,000 increase to that cost center. Then we have our transportation, and the driver in our transportation line was special education. So that used to be paid out of a special ed entitlement grant, and those funds are no longer able to support that, so it goes in the general fund. So this is all the transportation to have our students not only attend out of district, but if they need to go to a different building or from their home to the building because they can't ride on the regular bus, we have to provide transportation, okay? And we contract for that. And so that increase is $163,658. So don't total all that up and say, well, that doesn't equal the 1.7. I'm sharing with you what are the big impacts to the budget. Okay? So those are the big impacts. Next slide. So how do we pay for that? So you'll be voting on some articles on how we pay for that. We have revenue we bring into the district outside of tax dollars needed. So we bring in $669,000, which are students that are state agency clients. That should have been state, not stage, so I apologize for that. But we collect if there's laptop damage, child development services, there's main care reimbursement, and then we use fund balance as well. So at the end of the year, when we have dollars, they go into an undesignated fund balance until we designate it. And so we're looking at designating $400,000 to offset taxes as revenue. And then there's miscellaneous. We also have state allocations, so we are receiving $11,383,000 from the state dollars. And in order to have those state dollars come to RSU4, we need to collect what we call required local allocation, which is property taxes, of $6.2 million. And then we have additional local allocation. So above that amount, we ask for $5 million approximately. and that totals, so the expenditures and the revenue match. So what we have for revenue is what we can expend on the expenditure side. Okay, so I just want to give you a big picture of what you're about to see as we go through the different cost centers. So next, I would like to introduce the school attorney, Aga Dixon, who I've invited because I'm often asked, how does this work? What is a public meeting? And so forth. So she's just going to do a little overview of that. It won't take long, quick, and then we'll jump right in.
All right,
Okay.
so the request is to have the attorney do a quick overview. Hearing no objection, so ordered.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for allowing me to speak tonight. I'm Aga Dixon with the law firm of Drummond Woodsum. And as Katie mentioned, I'll just provide you with a very brief overview of the budget process and how this meeting fits in with the budget approval process for the school. And then walk you through the warrant articles very quickly to sort of explain some of the numbers from a purely procedural perspective. So as you probably know, the Maine legislature has exerted a lot of influence over how school budgets are developed and how they're approved. And so everything we do today is sort of a dictate and an attempt at complying with the state law on this stuff. And that includes both the format of the that must be used to present the operating budget, as well as the process of approving it. So first of all, the first step is your elected officials, the school board, prepares the annual budget, as you know. And that is their legal responsibility. And they've had to do that since 2008. Yes. I will eat the
there you
mic.
go.
Is that
There
better? Thank you. They've had to prepare the the school boards around the state have had to prepare the school budget in the format that you see, what we call the cost center format, since 2008. And I'll talk a little bit about those cost center and revenue articles in just a moment. But as a practical matter, the school board relies very heavily, as you know, on the superintendent and administrative staff to actually pull together the budget and assemble that information. And they spend many months leading up to this meeting, preparing the budget and holding workshops, public meetings, to really develop the budget and think through all of those details about how costs change and what anticipated costs are coming down the pike. So that's the first step. The second step is what we're doing tonight. The school board submits the budget to this body, to the voters, for approval. And in most cases, the budget also, as with your district, also requires a separate referendum vote by the voters. So you're going to be asked today to approve the operating budget as well as some miscellaneous articles. And whatever you approve will then be passed on to the entire district voters at a secret ballot referendum on June 11th. And that's really the step when the operating budget is finalized and fully approved for the next year. So that's really the goal here. So, and you can think of this meeting, the budget meeting part of this process, as basically a middle step to pass along the proposed budget of the school board to the full body of voters in your district, in your regional school unit. Just a quick overview of the warrant. Yeah. If you take a look at the warrant, you'll see that the first section, you have 11 articles. These are your expenditure articles, and those are the ones that are organized in cost centers. So the voters have to take separate action on each of the articles, and you're basically approving an expenditure or an appropriation for a particular purpose. So there are 11 specific appropriations instead of a single appropriation for the entire budget. If you flip the page, you'll see 2 additional articles that the state law requires, which is the revenue articles. So Article 12 is the article that includes state matching funds. That one, if you downward adjust it, what that means is you're actually dropping the amount of money that the state will provide for your public education. And then Article 13 is for the balance of local dollars to fund the budget as proposed. Finally, following these articles, you have Article 14, which is the budget summary article. And that includes basically all other non-tax dollars to support the proposed operating budget. Now, if you're astute and you're quick math brain, if you try to add up the articles, the expenditure articles, and compare that to the sum of the revenue articles, you're going to find that they're not equal. And that is because this meeting really doesn't have to vote on every aspect of the school budget. And so the RSU has miscellaneous revenue, as the superintendent alluded to, that are not shown on this warrant. So that's why the expenditure articles don't match up with the revenue articles. And then finally, you have 3 additional miscellaneous articles for matters that are on top of the operating budget, and those include the school lunch program, adult education, as well as approval to spend grant funding. So that's a quick and dirty overview of the warrant and sort of how the numbers operate with one another. I'm here if you have any specific questions about that. Thanks.
All right, thank you very much. So as we jump into the budget articles, I'll just remind people that I will read the article in its entirety. I will look for a motion. So please be recognized and make a motion. I will look for a second. Once we have a second, I will open it up for questions or discussion. Please come to the microphone.
My name is Gary Parker. I would ask that we take Article 13 out of order. I make a motion to take Article 13 out of order, which is acceptable, just so everybody knows.
There is a motion to take an item out of order. Is there a second? It has been seconded. To take an item out of order requires a 2/3 majority of those present. Are we ready for the question? All those in favor of taking an item out of order and moving to Article 13, please raise your paddles. Those opposed? All right, that did not receive a 2/3 vote. We will continue with Article 1. Article 1, to see what sum the RSU will be authorized to expend for regular instruction. The school board recommends $7,839,511. Motion, please.
So moved.
Mr. English?
So moved. Second.
Mr. English has been recognized for the moving. Is there a second?
Second.
It has been seconded. Questions or discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Oh, we do have a question. This is in regards to regular instruction.
Yes, and again, I'd like to know, is DEI or any COVID funds, previously funded positions or funds part of this? And I don't want to come up every time, so Superintendent, okay. I just want to know if COVID funding or positions are part of this or DEI, and I don't want to come up here on every article, so if I could have the superintendent tell us on the record if that is or is not part of any of this cost.
All right, I think the question was directed to the superintendent. I will ask the superintendent.
No. Both questions.
All right. Any further questions or discussion in regards to regular instruction? I see someone coming in the back.
Just for clarification, as I understand it, you're saying these increases are solely the result of salary increases, healthcare increases. There's no new positions, and none of the positions that are currently being maintained were a result of any additional COVID funding. Is that accurate?
So the total increase is mostly salary and benefits, but it also includes supplies. There are other lines that are located on our budget site. There are no positions here that were in COVID. And what else did you ask?
I think I just wanted to make sure that there were no additional
No.
positions.
There are no additional position. The board did reduce an unfilled secondary position in this cost center.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you. Next question.
Hi, my name is George Merrill. Just wondering what the percentage is that the district pays for health insurance for employees. Hello, can you pay attention over here?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Excuse me.
Sorry.
Address the comments to me,
You got
and I'll deflect the question.
Okay.
All right, the question was about that portion of health insurance.
We would have to look that up. It's not at the top of my head how much that is. You can see how many positions are here. 86 teachers are represented, 5 educational technicians. So,
But she doesn't know the percentage that employees pay for health insurance?
oh,
Isn't
the
that
percent, I'm sorry. I thought you were asking what was the increase to this cost center based on that.
just the percentage?
Okay.
Yeah, so we have different collective bargaining agreements in our staff. So the teachers' CBA, we pay for 80% of coverage. We pay 100% for single subscriber, and that's similar with our administrative contract. And then for our support staff contract, we pay 100% single subscriber. And if they choose to elect a family or adult with child or 2 adult, they pay the additional.
Okay,
Does that answer your question?
it did. I have another one.
Okay.
What is the current fund balance today?
Give me just a moment and I can look that up for you.
Sure.
Do you mean from our previous audit?
Yeah. Your undesignated fund balance. I wonder why she's doing that, Mr. Moderator. If maybe you can read the screen or somebody can read the screen so we essentially know what's in which. Yes, I can get closer, thank you.
Yeah, I can't see the screen from here, but there are handouts. Sharon has a handout right there
All right.
that would have that verbatim.
Mr. Moderator, can we make sure that when they come up to the mic that they're introducing themselves, please? And their town, thank you.
Well, they can introduce my name, yes.
That happened. I did that.
He did.
Yes, it wasn't you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
The current fund balance is $1,437,114.
Does that answer your question?
May I follow up?
You may.
And what percentage of that, or what's the number that's going to be used to reduce this budget?
We're applying $400,000 of that for this budget.
Thank you.
All right. Any further questions or discussion on regular instruction? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please raise your paddles. Those opposed? Motion carries. Article 2, to see what sum the RSU will be authorized to expend for special education. The school board recommends $5,041,011. Motion, please. Okay, it's been moved. Is there a second? It has been seconded. Any questions or discussion on special education?
The same question as before. Any COVID funding or any DEI funding in this article?
No.
Thank you.
Rocky from Sabatis. Can I just get an explanation as to why such an increase in that article? I'm sorry.
All right, I'll repeat his question. His question was, why was there such an increase in this article?
So that was part of the overview that you had, was the increase in the tuition for the 19 slots. And then that was the major push. Yeah, can you go back? So, yeah. So there we had the 335,000, and then of course we have staff in here as well. So 335,000 of the increase was for the out-of-district placement and related services. And then also we have employees in there. Do you want to go back to that slide? Thank you. You'll see that we have 15 special education teachers, approximately 40 educational technician position, the director of special education, we have an administrative assistant, 1 speech teacher. So those are what's covered in those costs.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, and just a quick follow-up to that.
Go ahead.
Can you explain the 19 out-of-district placement?
Yes, so we have students that attend special private purpose schools, and that is determined through the individual education process. And so we budget, and we have that many slots that we need for our students.
All right, thank you. Any further questions on special education?
Hi, I'm Brian. I'm a little bit behind on looking at my numbers here, but it boils down to attendance. Oh, right there. 1,248 students, 2023. We spend $7.5 million in regular instruction. We have 251 students that are part of the special education. I'm curious as to how these 251 break out of the 1,200, whatever we had. And we ultimately come up with a need for $5 million for 251 students, when there's also regular instruction involved. Now, this one, I know you guys are not my biggest fans. I'm not going to oppose this one in any way, shape, or form, but I'm really very curious as to how we come up with $5 million when we already spend $7.5 million, and a lot of this education overlaps. My child uses the special education. I'm curious.
Any response?
I take that as a comment.
Okay.
So there's information on our website around the special ed costs, and as you know, there's costs for regular instruction teachers and their programming, and then there's costs for the instructional programming for those students.
So I guess if I were to come up with a question very clearly, is there any overlap with a single teacher where some of their funding is justified under regular student instruction and their funding is also justified under special education? Is it overlapping?
There is no overlap, no.
Okay. All right. That was, any further questions on special education?
Yes, it's Kevin Hartnett from Sabattis again. I was just curious, because it is a rather large number this year. I would really like to understand what, because I'm sure it has generated a lot of discussion with the board. What were the considerations, right? I mean, were there things that were considered to reduce this number? You know, it's a big number. It's going to drive people's property taxes in this room. I'm looking at a pretty serious bump, and it's not clear to me. I certainly appreciate this gentleman's sentiment. That's a lot of money for a very small percentage of our population of students. Now, I know that we need them. I guess we lean very heavily on the educator's judgment in this area, but it's a lot of money to be sending that many kids out of the school system, or at least to satellite educational facilities, right? These expenses are getting extreme, and everybody's having to tighten their belts. And I think what I'd like to understand is maybe to get an appreciation for some of the conflict that you folks went through to come up with this budget, because I am certainly conflicted when I look at it, and I'm going to struggle mightily to vote for it in its current state, right? And folks here are expressing their frustration, but we're not getting a lot of real clear feedback to make us appreciate, why these increases are so substantial this year. Thank you.
Can I clarify your question? Is your question in regards to the special education portion of the budget?
Absolutely it is. It's
Okay.
an 11%. Well, there's a few, right? So there's an 11% in Article 2.
Right.
When we get to the other articles,
Yep.
there's some
When we get to the other
substantial
ones, we'll do
increases
those ones as well.
Thank
Any response to the question about the increase in special education?
Well, we agree that it's a high number. We totally recognize that. So absolutely hear us that we look at every single thing. We go over staffing, we go over programming, we go over all of that. And the way to reduce is to invest too, that's where the challenge is. In order to bring some back, we have to hire more staffing. And then another challenge is the workforce right now on filling positions is also a struggle. And we did look at transportation, and we will continue to look at, can we do more of it in district? So absolutely what you're talking about, we're talking about regularly.
All right, thank you. Next question in regards to special education.
Yes. My name is Pat. I'm from Litchfield. I just have a question, and maybe this is totally off the subject in a way, but doesn't the state reimburse the district for the cost, and when does that kick in? Seems to me I remember like 2 years. It takes 2 years to come back, get some of the money back that is being expended. Am I correct?
All right, that's a question. Go ahead.
That is the question.
You are correct. As a matter of fact, if you look at our state funding model this year, we had a significant increase in funding in special education. It was close to $500,000 that increased our state funding formula. Yes.
All right, thank you. Next question regarding special education.
Hi, my name's Scott. I just have a clarification question, I guess. As I understand it, even if we were to cut this article by $2 million, the school is still required to provide all the necessary services for special education. So cuts would have to be made elsewhere anyways. Am I correct?
All right, I'll defer the question.
That is correct.
All right, questions in regard to special education.
Hi, Nanette Smith, Litchfield. I have a question on the 19 out of district at 100%. Now that is, the state just made that new law that these 19 kids, whether they show up 1 day a week, 5 days a week, the entire school year, or don't show up at all, our district is responsible for 100% attendance? Yes.
Correct.
And I'm just throwing this out there. Last year, this section was cut quite a bit. Was it not?
It was not.
It
It
was
was
not cut
proposed
last
and did
year.
not, no.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any further questions or discussion on special education? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please raise your cards. Those opposed? That motion carries. Article 3, to see what sum the RSU will be authorized to expend for career and technical education. The school board recommends $0. Motion, please. It's been moved and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Those opposed? That motion carries. Article 4, to see what sum the RSU will be authorized to expend for other instruction. The school board recommends $588,361. Motion, please. It's been moved. Is there a second? Second. It has been seconded. Any questions or discussion?
Same question as before on COVID, pre-COVID funding, and DEI.
All right.
No.
Okay. Further questions?
Kevin Hartnett from Sabatis again. I apologize. I just am curious. So you have a 13.4% increase. I'm not seeing staffing positions here. I was wondering what the primary driver was behind that 13.4% was.
Although it's not, the specific positions in here are the athletic director and athletic trainer. However, there's all the stipends for coaches, for extracurricular, co-curricular. So we have people that oversee those, and those increase every year as well. So that's what you're seeing there. You can see the board reduced 6 stipends in this cost center. And then we had obviously increases in officials, purchase services, and our repair and maintenance. So we also have increased that as well.
Any further questions?
Thank you.
Further questions? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please raise your paddles. Those opposed? That motion carries. Article 5, to see what sum the RSU will be authorized to expend for student and staff support. School board recommends $2,691,764. Motion, please. It has been moved. Is there a second? It has been seconded. Questions or discussion? Questions or discussion? Okay. I thought you were moving to the mic, so.
Sorry, I wasn't paying attention. I was coming down here for question discussion. Are we at that point?
Yes.
Okay. Question number 1. We are on student staff support. Does the attorney come out of this particular line item?
No, this is attorney fees come out of system administration.
System administration. Okay, I'll be back for that one. Our sheriff back here, is that same thing?
That came out of the school resource officer line, and that is in maintenance. Where's Jonathan? Maintenance. Central office, system administration.
System, okay. I'll come back and ask another question later.
Okay. And I'll answer so you don't have to go to the mic on that. Okay. So this is no new position. However, there are 2 positions here. That was the technician, the IT technician that was in the ARP fund are in this cost center. There is not a position for DEI, as I explained to you before. The position that oversees curriculum is in this cost center. That's the Director of Curriculum Assessment and Instruction. But there is no position in the budget that focuses on DEI. Okay.
All right. Any further questions on student and staff support? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion carries. Article 6, to see what sum the RSU will be authorized to expend for system administration. The school board recommends $776,248. Motion, please. It has been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It has been seconded. Questions or discussion?
I promise I'll do my best not to get as heated as last year. First off, thank you for cutting this budget down. However, I can't get past our attorney sitting here. How much do we pay for Miss Attorney?
So this
Hourly.
evening, we will pay $333 an hour.
Per
And
hour.
with our attorney fees, we often have support when there's any concern around personnel, involved in negotiating with contracts, any questions that may come up that need legal counsel.
So $330-ish an hour for 5 hours, we'll call it. And how much for our sheriff back here?
$100 an hour. This, and just to clarify, that is coming out of Cost Center 9, and it's under district costs.
I'll save the trip up here.
Okay.
We'll
So it's
lump them all in.
$100 an hour.
So I feel like you guys were half listening, half understanding what we went through last year. We got pretty heated in there. The group was actually twice the size of it as it is now. A little shocked that we're kind of light. What's it going to take? What's it going to take to not waste money? I get it. You feel like you needed her here, but she honestly wasn't needed last year. And so far, we're going to spend $1,000, give or take, to explain what the moderator already explained to us and what 90% of us already know. So it's $1,000 just wasted. Rather that go to a teacher. I think everybody here would rather that money go to a teacher. And then the sheriff. I love law enforcement. Love him. Great guy back there, I'm sure. Totally unnecessary. Not that I've ever heard has anybody been physically threatened in this building over this school budget. Yeah, we get a little heated. I mean, please, somebody stop me if I'm wrong, because I'm hearing somebody speaking out of turn. Have you guys had threats that we're not aware of? I see your head nodding, Jill, but is that a yes or a no?
All right, please direct your comments to the
Sorry,
moderator.
Mr. Moderator, could you ask Jill to speak her answer, not a head nod, please?
So can you repeat the question?
Can she speak her answer? Has she been threatened by phone, email, or other method that would warrant and justify the expenditure for a county sheriff to sit behind our back?
A member from the audience has posed a question for the chair.
So no, not in a personal way, but where the last meeting left off from our last budget meeting, it got really heated. It took some time for some people to actually do calm down, and we noticed there were some people in the parking lot and other things like that. So as a caution, this is what was brought forward.
Okay. Awesome.
All right. Any further questions? Yes, ma'am.
Could you please ask the board why it is that first of all, it's very threatening for us too here, because we have not been listened to, and all this money, it's as if it's growing on trees at a time when everything costs so much. And like, really, truly, if the person who pays your bills, all of your townspeople, and we're not even asked, can we spend $1,000, as if it just rains money. When, as this gentleman said, when does the board ever decide that is we the people that are giving them this money to spend? That is my question. And I would appreciate an honest answer. Thank you. And my name is Diane Larry from Litchfield.
Thank you, Diane.
Can she just repeat and clarify what her question actually is?
Oh, I was perfectly clear. Where do you get the right, now that we're talking face to face, where do you get the right to just willy-nilly spend our money? Bringing in a lawyer, bringing in that you felt you needed protection. And again, I'm all for things that are needed, but this lady hasn't told us anything we really didn't already know. And at a time when there's so little money that goes anywhere, to spend it as if it just rains from trees is I don't get it. Can you enlighten me?
Sure. So we asked the attorney to be here because last year we were asked to explain the process to many people during the first meeting. And so we as the board, that's not where we're supposed to go. It's not our job to explain the process or to when we're learning the process. So that's why the lawyer was here, was to help explain and go through the process with the public. Because the public last year spoke saying they didn't understand the process. So because the public spoke, this is what we did in turn, is to bring in the lawyer so that we could have somebody who understands. I didn't ask also for the sheriff to be here for anything threatening. It was just so that if anything got out heated in the parking lot, like we heard from last year, we had somebody here who could de-escalate that. It wasn't a personal threat. It's not a threat to anybody here, but we want to make sure that there's no escalation after or during the meeting. That's what that was for. So she was asked to be here because the public spoke, asking for clarification of how the process worked.
May I
All
ask
right.
one more question, please?
A brief follow-up?
Do we have a limit to how much we can spend on a lawyer at any given time? Or is that something we have no say in?
So it's in the budget as a line item. And this is coming out of this year's budget. It's not coming out of your current one that's coming through. So that's already been voted on and put in there. This isn't an extra expenditure for next year at all. But this is something the public asked for, and so this is what we were given. I'm giving this to you.
That's funny, because I wasn't asked, but thank you for your time.
All right. All right, thank you. Any further questions on system administration?
Yeah. Joel Furrow from Wales. A couple of questions. I'll start off with, if I understand it correctly, Mr. Moderator, what I just heard was that the board heard from the public last year that we didn't understand the process. Apparently didn't hear that we didn't want you to raise the budget high enough. This is the point. And the response, if I'm understanding this correctly, and that's my question, if I'm understanding this correctly, the response to that was to bring in an attorney to sit here for $300 an hour. Am I understanding this correctly?
Yes.
Okay. Clearly, there was not hearing on this. And just to put a point on it, this expense, along with the additional budget that was passed last year, wiped out the homestead exemption that my family was eligible for after owning our home for enough time in Wales. So that's where our family's at. This addition to our budget will effectively, over 2 years, increase our property taxes by a third. That's absolutely ridiculous. Second question I have would be, was there consensus meaning a unanimous consensus on the board in the addition of attorney, for the need of an attorney tonight and the need of the sheriff?
No.
What was the division? What was the vote on that?
There was no vote.
There was no vote. So who had discretion?
I did.
It was
Along
at your
with the
discretion?
superintendent, yes.
In both cases?
Yes.
Okay. That brings me to the sheriff. I'm going to read a post from our board chair, Jill Burchard, earlier today. Let the conspiracy theories begin. Later on, there were comments referencing those who had opposing views, referencing the word crazy was used, and other counselors, other board members thought it would be interesting. We brought popcorn to watch, apparently, what could be a show.
All right.
Sir,
I want to make sure that your comment is regarding system administration, because that's the...
Sure. Yeah. Well, I guess I'm not seeing a lot of leadership, so I'd like to see additional cut in this particular area. If I have to reference it, the reason I'm referencing this is because the sheriff, apparently the sheriff comes up out of the later line item, but we've already referenced it, so I'm relating to the sheriff. Maybe this comes out of a later warrant. I'm not sure, but my question has to do with the presence of the sheriff. That's what I'm getting to.
Okay.
Yeah. These are inflammatory comments about community members, presumably residents of our towns. And I find it highly hypocritical to state that we might need a sheriff here when we have I would equate these as these are bullying comments. If I hear these from my kids talking about other kids, I would call that a bullying comment. And it's really hypocritical to tell us that you need a sheriff here when you're making public comments about people who oppose your views. I don't understand that. There's not a need for this individual to be here. I'm all in favor of our law enforcement. I don't think anybody in our towns would be, want to degrade our law enforcement. I'm not. So what is the actual need? What is the real tangible need, and whose discretion is it to impose these additional expenses?
Right. I think that question was asked and answered, and it was the board chair and the superintendent. Do you have any further questions regarding system administration?
I guess not.
All right.
Just want to make that point clear.
All right. Thank you, sir. Further questions on system administration?
Rocky from Sabatis. I was just looking it over, and there's a decrease, so it kind of shows. But then if you look at it further, the assistant superintendent had resigned, and you guys have moved her fund or that position's funding to actually cost center 5. So where is this actual deduction coming from? Because to me, is there actually a tangible deduction from this cost center?
Yep. So the position that you referenced, the assistant superintendent, was changed to director of curriculum assessment and instruction and the ESEA coordinator and moved to cost center 5. So that position, along with the associated benefits and taxes, went to that cost center. But we did have increases in this cost center, like our fiscal software was paid for out of cost center 5. It belongs in cost center 6 because that's where our payroll, our time and attendance, our absence management is managed through. So that software needed to come in. So there was sort of a little bit of an in and out. And then also we had an addition of $25,000 for the potential of Litchfield withdrawal that we were advised we needed to have for legal fees if that moves forward.
Does that answer your question? All right. Further questions on system administration?
Same question as before, please.
So this is, the answer would be no. There's no new positions from ARP, and there's no positions for DEI.
Okay. Second question is, who is responsible for the budget, developing the budget?
The question is, who is responsible for developing the budget?
Yes.
I think the school board is the ultimate responsible party, but I will defer that question to the superintendent.
Yeah, so the process starts way back in December, where we meet with our administrative teams who start to develop what are the needs in the district by building and by departments and by directors, and then we meet with those folks and we develop, so the management team develops a proposed budget for the school board, and then over the months of February, March, the school board goes through the budget, and then they reach a budget to adopt to bring to this meeting.
But who is ultimately responsible?
The school board signed the warrant that has brought us here tonight.
Then the school board can't explain the budget process to us, where we have to pay a lawyer, what, $5.50 a minute to be here?
All right. Was that a question, or was
Oh, that's a question. Do we have to pay a lawyer $5.50 a minute to be here when the school board should be explaining that process to us?
Right.
I mean, that's a terrible waste of money.
Right. Actually, the school board presents it. The superintendent by law is required to present it publicly, and then that's why we're here at this meeting. This meeting is where we will determine what that budget number is that will be put before the regional school unit number 4.
Okay, then my final question would be, can we excuse the lawyer so we could save tax dollars to the taxpayers of Wales, Sabatis, and Litchfield? Is there a need for, and no offense to you, ma'am, is there a need for her to be here right now?
That is not a question for me as moderator. So, and I don't think it's pertinent to this budget hearing tonight. So,
I know it's last year's budget. Okay, thank you. But it's still my tax dollars. So,
all right. Next question in regards to system administration, please.
Hi, George Merrill. Again, I heard a little bit of the answer of what the reduction was, but can you give us the numbers the person that was transferred to a different cost center, what is that number of her, his, their, them salaries?
The package was around 130,000.
And is that all in that one cost center?
No, we put a portion of that into the Title I grants.
Which is which center?
It's a federal grant. It doesn't live in any of the cost centers in the general fund.
Okay. And can you explain, I guess, all the numbers? So 130 came out. We only see a decrease of 60. I know you said we put additional money in, but what are the numbers and where'd you get them?
Yeah, other various line items have increased. So our audit fees have increased. Our general liability insurance has increased.
Can you provide numbers with that?
All of these numbers have been posted on our website, line by line, as we went over these cost centers as a board. So, I mean, they sum together to be the reduction that you see in that cost center.
Okay. Again, we're here at a public hearing and not on a website. I would really like to hear those numbers and what the increases were for each line. You have those available, they're on the website. We want to know, and it sounds like, you don't want to share, you want to send us back to the website to look at those numbers. And I think that knowing what the reductions were and where those monies came from is germane.
All right. I think the question's been asked, the question was answered, that information is not available here tonight, but it is posted on the website.
Well, it seems strange that they can't access the website from here. I said, it's just strange that they couldn't access the website from here and provide those numbers. But again, I guess we as a community will look them up and provide our vote.
All right. Thank you, sir. Next question regarding system administration.
This is a comment, if that's all right with
Sure.
the moderator. Thank you. Christine Garrett Sabatis. A couple of things. I'd like to make a comment about why to have a professional here in the position of the lawyer. I personally, and I'm sure there's others of you here, have dealt with issues caused by other people making the decision that they did not need a professional or professional experience on something. I have spent thousands, tens of thousands of dollars fixing a survey issue because someone decided they could do that themselves. So I'd just like to say sometimes it's very important to have professional counsel with you. Secondly, I ran some numbers on the expenses. I know a lot of people have issues with the administration costs. I combined Cost Center 6 and Cost Center 7 and figured out what percentage of the budget that is. It's about 8.4%, and then a bunch of other numbers. That's pretty low, considering that is covering things like getting payroll out, making sure that the phones get answered, mail and such. It's not a lot out of the entire budget. I do understand the concern about cost increases, but we've seen a cost cut here. And moreover, inflation between last year and this year combined is over 11%. So the fact that this budget has increased is largely attributable to the fact that the cost of everything has gone up, which I'm sure we are all aware of. We're aware that the cost of everything has gone up, and that has had an impact on all of us. However, we cannot expect to keep the budget of the school flat funded so that one of the costs that we do control does not go up. Otherwise, we are shortchanging our children. And that is the long and the short of it. And I believe that's my final statement on this particular cost center. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions or discussion on system administration?
I'd like to make an amendment to the motion that we fund the cost center system administration at a flat $700,000.
So there is an amendment being proposed. of 700,000, and it is there a second? It has been seconded. Questions or discussion?
Yes, thank you. Just to follow up on a comment that was previously made, it's Kevin Hartnett in Sabattis. I do appreciate the inflation and the cost of living increases in the last couple of years. Most of those costs are completely out of our control, right? This is a cost that we can manage, and we should try and endeavor to do whatever we can to manage it. I certainly appreciate everyone's sensitivities with the rise in the cost of living, but we cannot make it all up in 1 year. This this budget's got a pretty stiff cost associated with it. I don't want to stand up here and go on and on, just that there's two sides of this, right? And if you try to fix it all in 1 year, an 11% cost of living bump, you can't hit the taxpayer with with a corollary 10% bump, because it just isn't going to work. I mean, it's going to have to get spread out somehow. We can't just do it all in 1 year. It's just too much of a shock, to the home economy. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Greenwood. One of my former students, by the way, at Wales Central. I've been in the district as a principal in 1971. I've been at look it up. A principal at Wales Central. I was a coach here at Oak Hill, and I was on the school board for 9 years. And over the past few years, I'm glad that we have a policeman here. There have been some fracases in the parking lot over the past 45 years, and it's happened, especially in today's environment. I'm glad that he's here. Could go south in some ways with the temper of the climate and cultural issues that are at stake. Also, on the budget process, I'm sure that every budget starts at the bottom from the teachers, the custodians, and it moves its way up through, and at each stage, there is a point at which it is condensed. It finally gets condensed and goes to the superintendent's office with the sources of income and all of that. Finally, it comes together in a budget. And the school board takes a look at it as a summary. So there's not much you can say about the process, except that if you want to know about a specific thing, like what was just raised, and it's on the line, online before you get here, it's better to look it up before you get here so you don't ask extraneous questions. You should be coming prepared with a specific. Thank you.
Thank you. Comments or questions regarding system administration?
Hi, another comment real quick. I just want to clarify something. I understand the previous speaker's concern about doing a big jump all in 1 year. I just want to point out that last year we had inflation of 7% and a school budget that increased by 1.34, something like. And so we did have the opportunity to incrementally raise our budget. There was motivated opposition to that raise, and therefore we ended up with what we ended up. We now need to address that, and that is unfortunate. However, this is where we are. Thank you.
Any further questions or comments on system administration? All right, the amendment on the floor is for $700,000. If that passes, it becomes the motion. If it fails, we'll go back to the main motion. Again, we're voting on $700,000 for Cost Center 6. All those in favor of $700,000, please raise your paddles. Those opposed? That motion fails. So we're now back to Article 6. The main motion was for $776,248. Any further discussion?
Rocky from Sabatis. Can I get a count of those numbers?
Yes, I had 18 in the affirmative, 27 in the negative. Any further questions or discussion? We're on the main motion? All right. There has been a request for a secret ballot, which requires a 10% of this body to indicate they want a secret ballot. If you're in favor of a secret ballot, please raise your hand. Those opposed? Yeah, we had 11 voting for it, which is more than 10% of those voting. So yes, we will have a secret ballot on Article 6. Any further discussion on Article 6? Sharon, what color ballot are we using? We'll be using a goldenrod ballot. At this time, I will bring your identifying marker. Go to your municipal clerk to get a goldenrod ballot. We'll be voting on Article 6. Just to clarify, we are voting on Article 6, and the motion on the floor was for the $776,248.
Nice. That's right up his alley. I'm going to have to go crash his party.
Once you got up there, I'm like, oh. So, yeah, so it's right up his alley.
Congratulations. And if I ever find time, I'll go crash his party. Really bring back the old days of the throwdown in the wood shop.
You guys were all hanging on
Honestly,
him.
that was a I don't think he's had that before. At all. The wrestling, the arm wrestling, the fighting in the wood shop.
I remember him telling the story of like the hot glue, and then the kid like pushing the other kid like 30 inches.
Oh yeah, blisters all across the palm of his hand. What do you think was all that big deal? My biggest memory of that school was wrestling with him in that freaking wood shop. But it's a good memory. All year long, kept talking shit. 3 of us jumped him the last day of school, and he laid all 3 of us out. He was on top of me with the 4-round shiver right in the chest. Kicked my ass. I couldn't believe it. And then he's the only one that I've never beat on the field. The only one.
To this day?
To this day. We walked in. Oh no, I got arthritis now.
So does he probably.
Does anybody need assistance with voting? If you need assistance with voting, please raise your hand and we'll send a ballot clerk to you. All right, has everyone voted who wishes? If you've not voted, all right, I now declare the ballot box closed and will begin counting. All right. The results of Article 6. There are 61 voters that have checked in. There was 41 yes, 19 no. The motion carries. Article 7. To see what sum the RSU will be authorized to expend for school administration. The school board recommends $1,194,586. Motion, please. It's been moved and seconded. Any questions or discussion?
So I will answer the gentleman's question. So this is one place where the assistant principal position that was funded by ARP funds is in this cost center.
All right, any other comments? Questions? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please raise your paddles. Those opposed? That motion carries. We did have discussion. Yep. Article 8, to see what sum the RSU will be authorized to expend for transportation and school buses. The school board recommends $1,390,011. Motion, please.
Rocky from Sabatis. I make a motion that we actually use last year's. This is the motion.
You can make a motion.
Yep. That we use last year's approved fiscal year funds of 2024 at 1 million. I'm not very good with numbers, but last year's numbers.
I got to have a number.
$1,098,950.06.
$1,098,098.
098,950.06.
Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded. That's $1,098,950.06. That is the motion. Any discussion? All right, are you asking the school board? All right. I would ask somebody from the board or the superintendent to respond to the question.
So in looking at, because most of this increase is salary and benefits, and it is covering 12 bus driver positions. As you can see, there's one new bus driver position added here. So, and we had that, remember when I talked about the driver, which was the special education transportation number. So that is also part of the increase, is transporting special ed students.
All right. Questions or discussion?
My name's Scott. The biggest complaint I heard all of this per current year's budget is school buses. Not being able to have school buses on the road, not being able to get students to school. So I don't really understand why we're cutting that, if that was the biggest complaint. So I would like to make an amendment for $1,390,011.
There's an amended. Is there a second? It has been seconded. Questions or discussion? We're still on discussion on transportation.
On the original motion or the amendment?
So we can discuss article. We can discuss the article, but the first vote we will take is on the amended amount of $1,390,011.
As far as, I guess, discussion for why I came up or figured to use last year's number is because of having two children in the district. There was quite some time that they weren't even able to get to school because there was no buses running, and we just kept hearing, we've got 2 new hires, but they never hired anybody. that we had substitutes. So there's money that I don't know the exact numbers left over in the budget, but I know that there's probably funding left over that we can just expel into next year. So that was my explanation as to why we should just keep the number the same, because the buses weren't running 100% all year long at all. There was quite often that we were only at 60% with the buses. And that's why I came up with that number.
Any other questions or discussion on transportation and buses?
Kevin Hartnett from Sabatis. I guess I was a little confused, so maybe you can help me, Mr. Moderator, explain what. So I thought there was a motion to reduce the budget and then there was an amendment so that we never got a chance to even look at or vote on last year's budget or the last year's number. I don't understand how that works, I guess.
All right, I will explain that. That is a great question. So the original motion from Rocky from Sabatis was for $1,098,950.61, and we were in
Correct.
discussion.
Last year's number.
Yep.
Correct.
And then somebody came up from Wales and made an amendment, and that amendment was for the $1,390,011, and that was seconded. So that is going to be the first item that we're going to vote on.
So okay. So even though we had an amendment for for different numbers, we put them back, and there's no. Okay, I guess I'm confused
Right.
as
No.
to how that
So,
sequence works.
So
but-
so I look for a motion, and then it has to be seconded.
and it was right.
Yep. And then if somebody didn't like that number, they could make an amendment.
So if we don't like the number that it was amended to, how do we go? I mean, or I guess I'm just not comfortable that we could put a number out there, and before anybody's had a chance to even discuss it, we're
Right.
back at the original number.
Yep.
And I'll be honest with you.
We're going to discuss it.
It's so just I would beg your patience for just a moment, because it's become very clear to me that there's two groups of people with very different agendas and priorities, right? And clearly the people that are trying to reduce the budget are in the minority tonight, based on my observation. And I don't feel like it's a very productive use of my time to have this conversation, because anything I try to do to reduce this number tonight, right, is I'm hitting a brick wall. I feel very powerless, right? I was told to come here to voice my opinion. My opinion is that a 10% bump in my property taxes is a heck of a lot, regardless of what you're trying to do with the school budget, okay? And I don't feel like I have any voice here at all. I've been at this microphone a number of times, but nothing's changing. None of these numbers are changing. And I honestly, if you take it to the town, I don't believe they're going to vote this in, because these are big numbers, regardless of the cross-section of this room.
Right.
I appreciate your
Right.
time and patience.
I will just reiterate parliamentary procedure. We had a motion, which was a lower number. That was amended. So we're going to vote on that one first. If that one passes, it then becomes the main motion, and we'll never get to the lower number.
Sure.
Okay? But if it fails, we go back to the original motion, which was a lower number. So I'm going to try to walk you through the process.
No, I totally understand your process. I just don't feel that it gives, I guess, a counter opinion or another idea of what this budget should look like as much of an opportunity as I thought we would have. So
If you're proposing a different number, we can do an amendment to the amendment. I'm not suggesting that. I'm just
I would
saying-
like to go back to the original number that was proposed in the original amendment
we
or
will
in the
only
original
get,
motion.
We
but
will
you can't
only get
there
to
yet.
that if the amendment fails.
No, I understand that. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Any further questions or discussion?
George Merrill. Again, looking at that cost center, I wonder if you could tell me what the percent of expenditure is in that cost center at the moment?
We were anticipating that, so hold.
Well, I expect if you anticipated, you'd have the number right off the top. I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
Gee, be
Oh,
nice,
I
George.
was
be
so
nice.
hoping
I
you were
am, I
saying,
am.
I'm happy you were kidding. So remember, we're not through the year.
Yes.
Right? So we're at 20% left in this cost center.
Right. And so, can you give me that?
So it's 227,000, but we still have until June 30th. So to say that, that's how much is left. And it doesn't roll into fund balance for transportation.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Any further questions or discussion on transportation and buses?
Nanette Smith, Litchfield, and you guys all know I work for the district, so it's very hard to come up and ask questions. But being one of the nurses in the district and knowing how many kids are showing up at school each day, there were many, many, many days kids couldn't get to school because they didn't have a bus driver. So if we weren't paying for a bus driver for a particular day, and we weren't putting gas into the bus drivers, in some cases for weeks, is there any savings from that that has been rolled over into this budget?
So some of the savings went into increasing the salaries for the bus drivers, because mid-year we increased bus driver salaries, so that helps support that to draw in more bus drivers. We also used contracted services at one point when we were really down, and that was 15,000, approximately 15,000
A day?
for that duration.
Okay.
And so we've hired an additional sub. So we did not, the 12 positions are what we're running on right now. We added the new position. What we've been doing is using that a long-term, like a permanent sub. That's why their buses haven't been down as much as we have the 2 permanent subs that are covering runs when people are out. Okay. So yes, we've added some additional substitute permanent subs to help with the runs.
All right. Thank you. Questions?
Corey Golub, Sabatis. My question is there I've heard there's overcrowding on buses at times. Is it legal for a student to be sitting on the aisle because there's not enough seats in the bus? Is that legal operation? And if it is not, does that jeopardize insurance rates for buses or vans, if it applied in vans as well?
All right. That might be a question for the transportation director or the superintendent.
Jonathan, do you want to speak to her? I mean, obviously students should not be sitting in the aisle, and if they are, I hope somebody is calling our office so we can address that. And so whether it jeopardize insurance, we would have to check on that, but we wouldn't want that. We have to stay within the capacity of the bus.
I just want to make sure, beyond the school walls,
Correct.
that the core values are being followed even on the road, and students are safe.
Absolutely, yes.
Thank you.
All right. Any further questions or discussion?
Quick question on the last year's budget was proposed to have, I believe it was 12 drivers, and then there was I think a fancy position for trip coordinator or something like that in last year's budget. And so far this year, with those numbers of the 12 drivers plus the 13th with the trip coordinator, but that wasn't supposed to be a driver. You guys have eliminated, I know of one run, which is the red bus, and I believe there was a second one. I may not know for sure, but therefore, how many buses are we actually running if we're eliminating runs and then the need for the drivers to exceed, if that?
I'll try to make sense of that. No problem. So for those who children ride the red bus, so we intend to open the red run. That would be the last run we're looking at opening it rearranges a lot of other runs, and we're not going to do that towards the end of the year because that's too much movement for families around right now. Everybody's used to what they're doing. But yes, the intent is to have 12 drivers and 10 runs. That is the goal. That's what we're going for.
Which essentially is
What we currently,
what was already in place from last year,
Yes.
correct? Okay, thank you.
Any further questions or discussion on transportation and buses? All right, we have an amendment on the floor, and that amended amount is $1,390,011. If that passes, it becomes a main motion. If it fails, we'll go back to the original motion. Are we ready for the question? All those in favor, please raise your paddles. All those in favor of $1,390,011, please raise your paddles. Those opposed? That motion, that amended amount carries. So now we need to vote on it again because now it's a main motion. But we can still have discussion. Any further discussion on buses and transportation? Seeing none, I will call for the vote on the amount of $1,390,011. All those in favor, please raise your paddles. Those opposed? That motion carries. Article 9, to see what sum the RSU will be authorized to expend for facilities maintenance. The school board recommends $3,422,432. Motion, please. It's been moved. Is there a second? It has been seconded. Any questions or discussion?
It's me again. I promise this will be the last time I stand up here, because as evident from last year, some of you guys listen, but don't really hear, don't really comprehend what's going on. And I really feel bad for picking out Miss Lawyer Lady over here.
Please direct comments to the moderator.
I am. It's not her fault. What occurred last year was a failure of moderation, not a failure of us understanding the process. And obviously that was missed by school board or whoever decided to invite Miss Lawyer Lady here. Okay? We're really not comprehending. I commend you guys. 2 cost categories have been cut. Everything else is seeing a double-digit increase, except for one other cost category. What are we going to have to do here? We're going to have to rally the troops and reject the budget again in June, and then go through this circle yet again? Yeah, I get it. We have inflation. Every household here has inflation. Every household here makes cuts. Tighten the belts. Figure out creative approaches to figuring this out. It doesn't involve a 20% increase, 26.49%. That's not inflation. Not even close.
Is there a question regarding facilities maintenance?
Yeah, facilities maintenance, he was paid out of that. I'm really curious as to who authorized that. Was it a unilateral decision or was there a group vote?
So there was a discussion at our office. I'll answer it. The director of operations and myself discussed it, and then we talked to the chair in discussion about that, and that's how,
So the good old boys club decided that?
Please direct all comments to the moderator.
Mr. Moderator, so I'm assuming the good old boys club decided to waste our money without involving the people that we actually elect? Is that correct?
I'm not familiar with the term good old boy club, so.
So am I correct in assuming that it was a unilateral decision made by few, not involving the people that we elect to make the decision?
I think the question was answered by the superintendent as to who made that decision.
Okay. I'll leave you guys alone for the night.
All right, further questions or discussion on facilities maintenance?
It's interesting that we're harping on $1,000 when we're talking about a budget this big. It's also interesting that we're pointing out that the administration that we hired to put into position and the chair of the school board that we elected into that position made a decision, and that decision is being questioned even though we're the ones who put them in that position. I commend you guys for doing what you've done. I'm sorry that there are certain people who are quote unquote attacking you tonight, even though you have been put in those positions by us, the body. We need to remember that last year, complaints about administration happened, and then this is the article that got cut last year. And if you've being on the consolidation committee and walking through our schools, that was the wrong line item to cut last year. It's the wrong line item to cut this year. This is not where cuts need to be made. And I would also encourage anyone who is that upset about this budget that this process takes months of this school board, and that you show up at those meetings for the explanation of what actually is going into this budget, and you will understand why this budget is where it's at.
Further questions or comments on facilities maintenance?
Good evening. My name is Tom Wood. I'm from Litchfield. I've been privileged to serve on the Consolidation Committee and to walk through and examine both Sabattis Primary and Libby Tozier. And they're both suffering from deferred maintenance, as are some of the other facilities. And you can kick the maintenance can down the road so far, and then you start to do real damage to the infrastructure. I spent 45 years of my career in maintenance and operations, so I've seen what happens. So I have real heartburn over increases in the budget, but if you don't take care of your house, you're going to pay. You can pay today, or you can pay tomorrow, or the next day, but you don't get a free pass. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any further questions or discussion on facilities maintenance? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. The motion on the floor was $3,422,432. All those in favor, please raise your paddles. Those opposed? That motion carries. Article 10, to see what sum the RSU will be authorized to expend for debt service and other commitments. The school board recommends $433,656. Motion, please. It's been moved. Is there a second? It has been seconded. Any questions or discussion?
Dave Larry, can you explain what the payment of new school construction is under this article?
This is the debt that the RSU undertook for the Oak Hill Middle School renovation. And next year is the final year of that payment.
All right, any further questions or discussion on debt service? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All those in favor, please raise your paddles. Those opposed? That motion carries. Article 11, to see what sum the RSU will be authorized to expend for all other expenditures. The school board recommends $0. Motion, please. It's been moved and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please raise your paddles. Those opposed, that motion carries. All right, Article 2. I'm going to read it in its entirety. It's a little long, but please bear with me. Article 12. To see what sum the RSU will appropriate for the total cost of funding public education from pre-kindergarten to grade 12, as described in the Essential Program and Services Funding Act, and to see what sum the RSU will raise and assess as each municipality's contribution to the total cost of funding public education from pre-kindergarten to grade 12, as described in the Essential Programs and Services Funding Act in accordance with Maine Revised Statutes Title 20A, Section 15688. Total appropriated by municipality. The town of Litchfield, $5,841,409.64. Town raised by the town of Litchfield as the RSU assessment of that municipality, $2,846,489.66. Town of Sabattis, $8,751,202.76. Raised locally, $2,496,953.66. Town of Wales, $3,072,340.23. Raised locally, Town of Wales, $938,495.34. Total appropriated, $17,664,952.63, and the amount to be raised locally is $6,281,938.66. Motion, please. It has been moved. It has been seconded. Questions or discussion? All right. Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Please keep your paddles up because I need to do an actual count on this for the record. All those in favor, please raise your paddles. Those opposed? There was 28 in the affirmative, 9 in the negative. That motion carries. Article 13 will be by state statute a written ballot. To see what sum the RSU will raise and appropriate in additional local funds, recommend $5,043,626.03, which exceeds the state's essential programs and services allocation model by $5,043,626.03, as required to fund the budget recommended by the school board. The school board recommends $5,043,626.03, which exceeds the state's essential programs and services allocation model by $5,043,626.03 due to inequities in the EPS funding formula, including but not limited to the regional labor market adjustment factor, student-teacher ratios, extra and co-curricular activities, programs, and administrative costs. Motion, please.
I make a motion that the total be $0.
Is there a second? It has been seconded. Any discussion?
Bob English, Wales. I'd like to offer an amendment to that motion to make it $5,043,626.03.
Is there a second? It has been seconded. Discussion.
Tom Wood from Litchfield. I move Amendment 2, that the sum be $4,506,210.
Can you repeat? Is that, did you say $4,506,210?
Correct.
Is there a second to that? It has been seconded.
If I may.
Questions or comments?
The board has considered and published the possibility of consolidation by vacating Sabattis Primary School with an estimated savings of $537,416.16. The motion that I put forward reduces the original ask as printed in the under Article 13 by that amount. I'm sorry. I'll give it another shot.
If you could just highlight real quick what that number was for your motion. It's $4,506,210. So that's the amendment to the amendment. And your rationale was?
It reduces the original as printed by $537,416, which would invoke the vacating the Sabattis Primary School as examined by the school board earlier this year.
All right, questions or discussion? Just so everybody knows, there will be no more amendments allowed at this time. We're at the maximum for that. Once we vote, we can certainly do that again, but as of now, we have 3 secret ballot votes ahead of us, but we're still in discussion.
As far as this goes, what is the reasoning behind not following what the state recommends? Because either way we're exceeding the state's recommendation, whatever their number is. So what's the reasoning behind us local taxpayers exceeding what the state recommends?
Superintendent?
Yeah, this additional local funds, if this is not approved, would amount to a reduction of what you proposed of $5 million to this budget, which obviously would be devastation. So it's not connected to the state funding. So it's the total budget. So to make it the revenue to uphold the expenditures, this is the ask.
So that's the reasoning behind exceeding the state recommendation by $5 million? Okay.
All right, any further questions or discussion?
Mr. Moderator, I heard that there is an undesignated fund balance of $1.4 million. Number one, I'm a little concerned that there has been that much accumulated, probably more than 1 year's worth. And there is only $400,000 that's being considered applicable to the next fiscal year in order to reduce the taxes for the communities. As a director of a local food bank, I am seeing people every week lamenting their tax bills, their costs of everything. They are being impacted so strongly and so severely with all of the increases that they're facing. The stress level is incredible. It's just absolutely incredible to see a single senior citizen say to me, my income is $864 a month, and that's all I have to live on. I don't know what I'm going to do. This is the kind of person that tax increases like these increases promote is going to be devastating for a number of our citizens and impactful for every single one of them. I would urge consideration for the board to seriously look at increasing the amount of money that comes out of that undesignated fund to be used to defer tax increases. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions or discussion on the additional local article?
I'd like to get a response from the lady's question.
The question was regarding using additional money of the fund balance to offset this budget. That was your question, correct, ma'am?
That is something the board can consider. Right now in the board's proposed budget is $400,000. The concern around fund balance use one time or so forth is once you raise it to a certain level, you'll expect it the following year. So you have to be forward thinking to say, well, if you use X number this year and you don't have it the following year, then we have to make up the difference between the use of fund balance. So there's always a debate on what is an appropriate fund balance that can be maintained each year. Because if you count on it, then you have to have it. So that's, so when formulating this budget, we used the $400,000 that we used last year.
Thank you. Further questions?
Yep. Question whether or not is there a recommendation from the state or on what the fund balance should be?
Right now, the allowable is 9% of your budget. I think it will go down to, and Aggie might need to help me, to 6, is it 6%? Yeah, it will be going down to 6%. It had been at 3%, but due to COVID and it gave permission for schools to exceed the 3%. So it's at 9, and it's expected, I think it's next year, to go down to 6.
And just a follow up, where are we now? What percentage? Undesignated
So
funds versus.
Yeah, we can calculate that.
And I'll ask the moderator while we're waiting for that. Can we amend the motion, not at this time, that some of this money comes out of fund balance? Is that available to us?
That is not in the purview of this meeting. That would have to come from the board to another meeting as a proposal. But you can't bind, Sharon, correct me if I'm wrong, you can't bind the board with intertwining an article. Maybe the attorney could answer that question.
Yeah, the short answer is no, we can't take up that proposal, but it is something within the purview of the school board, and they can take that up as part of its future budget to increase that number of undesignated funds. While I have your attention, a quick point of order, Mr. Moderator.
Point of order, go ahead.
in the interest of justifying my existence here and also cutting down your legal fee, I would propose that you don't need a written ballot for the amendments, just the main article.
I am not an attorney, however, yeah, I would concur that I'm going to go with written ballots because that's my understanding of the statute. So. All right. Did the previous question earlier was the percentage of fund balance? Do you have that answer yet?
It's 6.66%.
Okay.
All right.
Again, a follow-up on undesignated funds. Is it my understanding that since all the money, the budget process is here today, that they won't be using any additional undesignated fund balance if the articles are approved as they are today?
Correct.
All right. Any further questions or discussion? All right. So we have a motion, we have an amendment, and we have an amendment to the amendment. The amendment to the amendment is the item that we will be voting on first. That is in the amount of $4,506,210. If it passes, it then becomes an amendment, moving one step forward. If it fails, we will move on with the other numbers. We will be voting with a pink ballot. I will declare the ballot box opened, and please begin voting. Does anybody need assistance with voting? If you need assistance with voting, please raise your hand. Has everyone voted who wishes? I declare the ballot box closed and will begin counting. All right, I'll call you back to order. Article 13, the first vote on the amendment to the amendment. There was 24 yes, 32 no. The amendment to the amendment fails. All right, so now we are on discussion of the amendment, and the amendment was for $5,043,626.03. Discussion. Is there any discussion? Mr. Manchester, are you heading to the podium? No, okay. All right. So the amendment to the amendment, once again, I'm sorry, the amendment is $5,043,626.03. Seeing no further discussion, I will go with the vote. And Sharon, what color ballot? We're going to be using a spearmint ballot. Spearmint. I declare the ballot box opened, and please begin voting. Does anyone need assistance with voting? If you need assistance, please raise your hand. All right, has everyone voted who wishes? I will declare the ballot box closed and we'll begin counting. All right, I have the results of the amendment vote. Article 13, the amended, was 5,043,626.03. There was 34 yes, 20 no. The amendment passes and becomes a main motion. Discussion, please. Is there any further discussion? All right, Sharon, what's our next ballot color? OSHA orange. All right, we'll begin voting on the main motion, which is $5,043,626.03. Does anyone need assistance with voting? If you need assistance with voting, please raise your hand. Has everyone voted who wishes? All right, I will declare the ballot box closed and we'll begin counting. All right, I have the results of the final vote on Article 13. That main motion was $5,043,626.03. 33 voted yes, 19 voted no. The article passes. Article 14. Article 14 is a summary of what just occurred. To see what sum the RSU will authorize the school board to expend for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2024 and ending June 30, 2025 from the RSU's contribution to the total cost of funding public education from pre-kindergarten to grade 12 as described in the Essential Programs and Services Funding Act, local funds for non-state funded school construction debt services, additional local funds for school purposes under the revised statutes Title 20A, Section 15690, unexpended balances, tuition receipts, state subsidy, and other receipts for the support of schools. The school board recommends $23,377,580. Motion, please. It's been moved. Is there a second? It has been seconded. Questions or discussion? All right. Just a reminder, this is just a recorded vote, so when you vote, please hold your paddles up because I need to do a count. So all those in favor, please raise your paddles. All right, those opposed? right, there was 31 voting in the affirmative, 14 in the negative. That motion carries. Article 15. Raises and appropriates funds for the school nutrition program to see if the RSU will raise and appropriate $56,514 for the school nutrition program with authorization to expend any additional, incidental, or miscellaneous receipts in the interest and the well-being of the school nutrition program. Motion, please. Is that a motion so moved? Okay, is there a second? It's been seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Those opposed? That motion carries. Article 16, to see if the RSU will appropriate $123,258 for adult education and raise $84,593 as the local share, with authorization to expend any additional, incidental, or miscellaneous receipts in the interest and for the well-being of the adult education program. Motion, please. It's been moved. Is there a second? It's been seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Those opposed? That motion carries. Article 17. In addition to the amounts approved in the preceding articles, shall the school board be authorized to expend such other sums as may be received from federal or state grants or programs or other sources during the fiscal year for school and other program purposes, provided that such grants, programs, or other sources do not require the expenditure of other funds not previously appropriated. Motion, please. It has been moved. It's moved. Is there a second? Been seconded. Questions or discussion? Yes, sir.
Yes, I was curious if we do get these grants or other revenues. Do we reduce the operating budget, or is that just additional? So if we do get any windfalls, we still get taxed at the same rate. We don't realize any savings. That savings goes into the I guess the carryover fund or your undesignated fund. Okay. So is there any mechanism in place that says if we got like $150,000 in grants, we could like reduce what we're asking for the next year? It just seems there should be some quid pro quo with some of these grants and the amount of taxes we're paying. Thank you.
So when we have grant funds, this budget is built around grant funds that we receive. Like we get a big chunk of grant funds in Title I, and that helps reduce the general fund because some positions are paid through that funding. So we use funds that we have from grants, or we get extra grants that offset if we know about them coming into the budget season. Right. Mm, yeah. Right. Mm-hmm.
All right. Any further questions or discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? All those opposed? That motion carries. As a reminder, this is as we near the conclusion of Part 1. Part 2 is the budget validation referendum on June 11th at your local polling areas. If you live in Litchfield, your polls are open from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. at the Litchfield Sportsman's Club. Sabattis at the town office, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And Wales, once again, the overachiever, 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. at the Wales town office. I do want to thank everybody for coming out. I want to thank our town clerks for all the hard work they did in putting this together. I want to thank our school board for proposing the budget and for bringing us here tonight. And seeing no further business, is there a motion to adjourn? It's been moved. Is there a second? It's been seconded. All those in favor? All those opposed? That motion carries. We're adjourned. Please return your paddles back to your town office tables.
The
That
board
was-
members need to stay to sign the warrants. Board members still remain.